Two, one. Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums in the Co-Captain's Chair. Once again on this Friday morning, Mr. Martin Popoff. Good morning, Martin.
Morning there, Pete. How the heck are you?
I'm doing okay, I guess. Okay, I guess.
Right.
Lack of sleep, doggy
Yeah.
do all night long. You know
Nice.
how that goes. But anyway, today we're talking about the tubes, right? Or the
Absolutely.
tubes, however we want to say it. Martin's got that wonderful live album right over his left shoulder, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. Right,
Yeah.
left shoulder, right shoulder, and then Martin. I don't know if you want to talk about that other one that's kind of hanging up.
Yeah, it's just a bootleg. I was never a big bootleg guy. I only own, 5 or 6 period ever throughout my life. But that's just an old Tubes bootleg that I got at some point. So
Yeah,
LP.
really cool band. I've been listening to these guys for a while, and they're, would you call them kind of an oddity in rock and roll? Sort of.
You know what's the most bizarre thing about the Tubes is that everybody thinks of them as crazy bizarre, and yet most of their music is as commercial as you could possibly get.
Yeah,
It's very
especially
strange.
especially the latter half of their catalog, right? Maybe you could say the first two, maybe three albums are a little, you know, weird and spots, but not any more weird than a lot of other bands we've talked about, right? Or that you can listen to.
It's almost like the latter 2/3, but the last 2/3 are two different types of commercial, right? The first one is kind of like tight, poppy, hard rock, very disciplined. And then the end, they discover this funk thing, right?
Yeah, funk and R&B big time.
Yeah.
And they've worked with some pretty notable producers that I think, and we'll get into this, where the producers really influenced their sound on those albums. And it's hard to classify this band. They're obviously a rock band, but like you mentioned, they later in their catalog, they incorporate a lot of funk, a little R&B. They incorporate early on little bits of jazz fusion, certainly a little bit of prog, some psychedelia. They love this whole kind of wacky theatrical vaudevillian thing, which they did from time to time. They had this kind of Zappa flair on occasion. And other things, which I'll touch on because I detect other stuff in their music. But a great front man, great lead singer. Instrumentally speaking, these guys were really good musicians. And a lot of really accessible material that the more you listen to them, you're more like, I'm surprised these guys weren't bigger than they were. Would you call them a cult band, or are they a little bit above that? I mean, they had a bit of success, but I think they could have had a lot more success.
I'm amazed because one of my fond memories is getting to see them only once, but it was this place called the Bears Den in Buffalo, which is this beautiful sunken little theater thing in the casino, in the Seneca Casino. I only saw 2 bands there ever, both super fond memories. The other one was the very first show ever of Derringer reunited with the classic lineup after 35 years, after the Sweet Evil lineup. So I saw Derringer play there, all of them, Danny, Vinny, Kenny Aronson, and Rick Derringer. And then I saw the Tubes there, and I interviewed them before the show, and they were the nicest guys and stuff. But I remember talking to Fee, like I was amazed that at least Completion Backwards Principle didn't go gold in the States. It's gold in Canada, and I think one other one is gold in Canada, maybe the one after. But I just remember hits after hits after hits being played on the radio all the time. And I can't remember how much of a video band they were, but I think they had some videos, and they seemed perfect for all of that early MTV era. And yeah, not a single gold album, and so commercial and so accessible. And like I say, I do remember those songs being played on the radio all the time.
Oh, they were, and maybe they weren't played on like your hit radio. I mean, on like rock radio, FM rock radio here in New York, anyway. I could think of at least 5 of their songs that were played all the time, and you hear other songs on their albums that should have been played. I kind of liken these guys in a weird way to Canada's Max Webster.
Yes.
They had a lot of the same quality, and he's wearing the shirt today. Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the same qualities and the same quirkiness, even vocally at times. Fee sounds a little bit like Kim, I think. And oddly enough, neither band really made it big here or did anything here. You know, bigger, obviously both bands had a little more impact up in Canada, but here in the States, yeah, most people know them. You know, most people at least have heard the name, or if they don't know the name, you kind of hum them one of the tracks and they're like, oh yeah, that song. I remember that song. So, and only, so we got 8 studio albums here. There is a kind of like a rarities collection that came out not that long ago called Mondo Birthmark, which is kind of a collection of rarities and never before released alternate versions of some of their, you know, popular early songs. So we're not, that's actually pretty good. We're not going to include that in this list though. We're just going to go with the 8 proper studio albums. So I'm going to have Martin kick us off with his number 8.
All right. So my number 8 is this one, Love Bomb. So essentially, this is the last album of theirs before the long hiatus. They came back later with an album, but what I don't like about this album, I mean, this is them in their full-on funk phase. It is beautifully produced. It sounds really, really nice. Let's see. Yeah, this is a Todd Rundgren one.
Yeah.
He did an earlier one as well. But so I love Piece by Piece. That was a bit of a hit. Stella, I think, was a bit of a hit. Eyes is a really funky one. These guys, when they put together a rhythm section and a bass line and stuff, it can be just amazing. I mean, it can actually almost sell me on funk, which is a music that I'm not a big fan of. But the problem with this record is when you get to side 2, it becomes almost like a weird dance remix party where there's like these short things going into long things and repeated themes, and it's very funky. And gone are the things I love about the Tubes, which are good pop hooks and poppy choruses and melody. Because necessarily when you get into the funk thing, it's a little bit more about rhythm. But Bora Bora 2000, even on side 1, and Love Bomb. So really one good reason, Stella and Piece by Piece. I think the album starts strong, but then it's just no, it's too much of that direction for me. So there you go, Love Bomb.
Yeah. It's my bottom one as well. It's my number 8. I had a hard time with my bottom 2. I like both of them, I like elements of both of them, but I don't find either one of my bottom 2 very strong, top to bottom, which is, you know, something I can't say about the other ones, because the other ones I enjoy pretty much. But yeah, I mean, you kind of said it all. I mean, the production wise, I think Rundgren does a great job here. I mean, for crying out loud, it sounds like a Todd Rundgren solo album almost in spots, especially from that same era. You know, Todd got really kind of really pop. I mean, Todd always did pop stuff, but he got really accessible, really started going down, like incorporating some soul and R&B, like in the latter 80s. And I mean, even like the vocal harmonies, they all sound like, ooh, it's like, is that Todd there? You know, because the whole album sounds like him. But Piece by Piece is a terrific song. And I remember like when I bought this album years ago, I was like, well, that's a great way to start this album off. That's a fantastic song. And the rest of it doesn't quite live up to that. But there are sporadic things on here, which I kind of dig. Stella, like you mentioned, is really catchy. Come As You Are is a nice ballad. I just don't find the need to want to listen to that all too much. Again, it sounds very Rundgren-y. One Good Reason, it's one of the more rockin' tunes on here. It's got a lot of vocal layers. You mentioned Bora Bora 2000, Love Bomb. Really groove laden, lots of funk and R&B on that. Say Hey, Muscle Girls, you know, again, a lot of R&B. To me, it's a really slick, glossy album. The songs are catchy and all that, but it's kind of like really left turnish from what we've really come to like from the Tubes up to that point. So for me, it's almost like the de facto least favorite out of all of them. But there's stuff on it I like, but it's not one that I reach for too often when I want to listen to this band.
Yeah, cool. All right. So my number 7, I went with this one, Genius of America. So, you know, this is we're in the realm where there's no nostalgia, you know, attached to any of this. It's just an album comes out. I don't even know if I was aware of this immediately or got it a year later or something like that. It just didn't matter to me that much. But you know, I play it and I found it a little humorless and mechanical, and the direction is kind of a little all over the place. It's a little hard rocky. There's not a lot of great strong melodies on it where I'm feeling like that's a great hit single or whatever. What did I like on here that I never saw it coming was a good heavy one. There's kind of a fast roots rocker thing called It's Too Late, which is really cool on it. The last one, Around the World, reminded me of like almost like a Texas music mixed with psych sort of ballad. I thought that was pretty cool. So, I mean, there are a lot of surprises on it, and it seems like it would be a grower if I spent some time with it, because, you know, the Tubes are a complicated band. They're musicologists. They love music. They know a lot about music. So they put a lot of work into it, and you know, all the credit to them for doing that. But no, I just found myself. It's one of those albums, a little bit like AC/DC. Rock or bust, where I wanted to love it so much, and yet I kept going through the tracks going, nope, 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 yes, nope, 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 yes, you know. And then you get to the end of it and you like 3 songs on it or whatever, and I was so ticked off about it, right? But yeah, so it's a little bit like that. So yeah, number 7, Genius of America.
All right, my number 7, I'm gonna go with 77's Now. Love that album cover though.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike this album. I think it's an interesting album. There you go.
Yeah.
To me, and I don't know if you feel this way, Martin, when I listen to this album, it sounds to me like similar period David Bowie.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, all right. So I'm not the only one. All right.
Similar period. What do we got here? 77. So
77.
I mean, it sounds like David Bowie from maybe even starting with the likes of Young Americans or Diamond Dogs or something like that,
Yep.
all the way up to Let's Dance and that era. So a lot of things covered, right? Because it's so eclectic, right?
It is really eclectic. Yeah, a little station to station, that kind of period. I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
even the vocals kind of sound very Bowie-ish. And, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Smoke is a good song. Hit Parade, Pound of Flesh, all to me sound like have that real Bowie feel from the vocals to the instrumentation. Strung out on strings, nice jangly rocker, some tasty guitar work there. Golden Boy is more of like kind of like a bluesy track. They do a really cool cover version of the Al Di Meola track, God Bird Change, which is actually written by Mingo Lewis. So it's kind of a weird album to have that song, because that's like a instrumental jazz fusion barn burner, and it's like dropped right in the middle of this album. But I'm okay with that, right? I'm Just a Mess, good hard rocker. I think it's a pretty solid record. I don't find this album as kind of catchy and memorable as some of the other ones, I guess, but it's still a really, really strong record, I think. I think there is a big, you know, like I said, these are my 2 bottoms, but there's a big chasm between the 2 of them, I think. But it's good. It's good. So that's my number 7. My number 7.
All right. A lot of what you just said about that one, I'm going to probably say about this one. So this is, I'm up to number 6. So this is my number 6, Young and Rich. Just never really connected with a lot of these songs on here. I really like Pole and Hole and Madam I'm Adam. That is so catchy and funny. Tubes World Tour is a good kind of hard proggy classic Tubes sort of song. What Don't Touch Me There is awesome. It's funny, it's cool. I love the female vocals, the Reese Styles on that. Produced by Ken Scott. I love this band shot of the guys. Like, what a great band shot, eh?
Yep.
Like, so artistic, right? But no, this is one. Slip My Disco I like as well. Don't like the title track at all, the Young and Rich. So it's one where I never feel like I particularly master the album and really engage with most of the songs on it. But it is the one, I think the first 3 kind of go as a group of that early version of the Tubes. So yeah, number 6, Young and Rich.
Cool. All right, my number 6, I'm going to go with Genius of America from '96. I got a hold of this when it first came out, so I guess I got kind of caught up in it a little bit, which I think is why it probably ranks a little bit higher than a couple of these others here. And again, first album in about a decade, right? Notable for not having Bill Spooner on guitar and backing vocals and, you know, writing and producing and all that kind of stuff. You know, he had a hand in everything in this band. And, you know, you kind of maybe miss him a little bit, I guess. I'm not sure, because this album's got a different flavor. I think you mentioned it's more of like kind of like a hard rock record, and I totally get that. But they also brought on board in some capacity Richard Marx to kind of help co-produce and co-write, and he sings a little bit and he plays a little guitar and keyboards, kind of like, him and Fee kind of like work together to kind of put this album together. And you can kind of hear his influence on a couple of those kind of softer, more commercial tracks, like Say What You Want, but there's some really, I think, really good stuff on here. I love the title track. Good catchy hard rocker. Arms of the Enemy's pretty heavy, I think. What else we got here? The ballad, How Can You Live With Yourself? That's got Richard Marx all over it. But I like Big Brother Still Watching is a really cool tune. And that's got, so Richard Marx co-wrote that along with Fee Waybill and Steve Lukather from Toto. And I can totally hear the Toto influence on that song. Really good rocker. Fish House is, again, that kind of funk thing, which was pretty prevalent in their music, right before this. Fastest Gun Alive, Who Names the Hurricane, another funk piece written by Prairie Prince. The new guitar player on this album is Gary Cambra. So I think it's solid. I think it's pretty listenable overall. Maybe it's a little on the long side, but that's what every band was doing right about this time. And I still enjoy it. I was playing it the other day. I'm like, it still holds up pretty well, I think. Is it a Tubes classic? Not really, but it's good. Good listen.
Cool. All right. Cool. Okay, my number 5, I went with Now. And what I love about this record, I mean, Hit Parade, which is kind of like a little bit of a country ballad, is definitely in my top 5 Tube songs of all time. I just love Hit Parade, play it all the time. Love Golden Boy, which is a little kind of dark and surly, strung out on strings, kind of the same thing. Smoke, one of their novelty sort of singles about smoking. Great song. I love the Captain Beefheart cover on here so much as well. My Head Is My Only House Unless It Rains. I love mellow tubes. There isn't a lot of mellow tubes out there in the world, but this has, those are definitely 2 of my favorite songs, even though they didn't write it. Kathy's Clone is great, again, with the female vocals, and I love the Godbird Change cover. And the rest of it, I'm not a huge fan of much of side 2, but all of side 1 literally is almost my favorite side of the Tube. So again, this fits in the the trilogy of the first albums perfectly fine, even though they really broke ranks on the album cover, right? The album cover is very different than the first 2 album covers, yeah. But yeah, I mean, anybody who covers Captain Beefheart, I love him to death, because I love the Captain to death, and it's so cool that they did that, right? Tubes is, as you mentioned earlier, they come from a little bit that Zappa end of thing, the Max Webster. I sometimes think of the Fugs or Firesign Theater or Bonzo Doodah Band or whatever they're called, right? Any of these bands that have a little bit of humor to them. They were originally from Phoenix. They moved to San Francisco. So they, Phoenix, Alice Cooper, right? Alice Cooper was a little bit of that kind of band in the beginning. And then, they're recording for Alice's label, right? For those first 2 albums. So those first 2 crazy Alice Cooper albums are a little bit like the Tubes. And then Alice moves to LA, the band moves to LA, and the Tubes move to San Francisco. And then we, forevermore, we think of them quintessentially as a California band, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so they come from that world, and they're still doing that on here. They call it satiric, right? But basically having a lot of humor in what they do. But just like Zappa, the idea is, if you're going to be funny, you have to back it up with superior musicianship, and really put a lot of work into the arrangements and the productions and stuff like that. So everybody sees that you're virtuosic, and that allows you to be funny rather than be funny and not have your chops down. So Tubes is kind of in that world, right? So there you go. Number 5.
It begs the question, here we are talking about the Tubes and Frank Zappa and Max Webster, 3 bands that incorporate humor in their music and superior virtuosity. Does that go over the heads of most people in the mainstream?
Yeah.
Because none of those 3 acts, were ever big bands.
Well, and we're going to get to it in a minute as we debate these latter albums. But I mean, Tubes just wholesale abandoned that and went in such a commercial direction that again, it just begs, like, it's bizarre that they weren't bigger. And maybe it is because, to go along with that, the stage show was still crazy, right?
Yeah.
So there was a disconnect there. But anyways, more
Yeah.
on that as we talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. All right, my number 5 is going to be Young and Rich from '76. Martin's got the actual album. I have this kind of compilation that puts together the first 2 albums, so you can see the credit card, the American Express card from Young and Rich cover there, right? And here it's got, so Martin's got with the regular colored hand, and here it's got the blue hand, right? And there we go.
Oh.
There they are on the back.
Yeah. Tracks.
So, second album, Tubes World Tour. Love that song. That's a really good rockin' fusiony proggy song. Lots of really cool like guitar solos and keyboard passages and things. You got Brighter Days, kind of funky, also kind of fusiony. Stand Up and Shout is kind of like their like honky tonk rocker. Not sure I like that song too much, but I'm not much of a honky tonk piano rock type of guy. But hey, they did a little bit of everything in their career. Martin mentioned Don't Touch Me there. That's, very popular song for them early on. Love the female vocals. It has like this kind of 50s like doo-wop kind of thing going on, which is pretty cool. Slip My Disco is another really cool tune. I like the lengthy Poland Hole Madam I'm Adam, which I think is kind of, again, shows that early prog and fusion element. And it's got that long rambling fee waybill vocal at the end that sounds like it could have come off of the Zap album. Pretty cool. Title track is good. I think it's a pretty strong album. It's not one of their best, but I think it's pretty strong and a pretty decent follow-up to a pretty terrific debut, actually, which we'll get to in a minute. So back to you.
Okay, well, we've got controversy here on Sea of Tranquility because I knocked this album down 4 slots. Literally up until we decided to do the show, this was my favorite Tubes album. And as I started going through these records again, I realized I was loving it only for like 3 or 4 songs that are some of my favorite Tubes songs. But the rest of it, I realized, this can't be my favorite Tubes album. So this is really bizarre that this is knocked way down. And even when I'm looking at my notes here, I've got them in the wrong order. So this is a late decision, but I'm going to go with my number 4 as Remote Control. So previously my favorite Tubes album. And that's because TV is King is my favorite Tube song of all time, has been for years. Love Turn Me On. I Want It All Now is a beautiful kind of poppy one. This is produced by Todd Rundgren. But let's see what else. Love's a Mystery. I don't understand. I don't like their super sappy ballads. And the melody of that one rubs me the wrong way. I love, like I say, I love Mellow Tubes. I love Hit Parade. And I love the Captain Beefheart cover. But I don't like, there's a few sappy ballads that I don't really like. I love No Mercy a lot. That's a really cool one as well. But yeah, I Want It All Now. Yeah. Turn Me On is just an amazing song. So that's probably what would be Love's a Mystery. I don't understand. I definitely heard that on radio a few times. Turn Me On, heard that on radio. But yeah, a little uneven, but it's got some of my favorite Tube songs of all time. And there's the old Hudson Valley Squares on the back, right? Yeah. So very cool. And this is obviously where they made their big switch in sound. Todd has a way of doing that to bands. Turns it a little bit Todd, but turns it so commercial that what is this? March 1979. So it's an odd year. It's a transitory year where kind of power pop and punk is given way to new wave. The Cars, the Romantics, the Kings here in Canada. You've got a little bit of like your New England, and I saw you did Avery the other day, right? Those kinds of bands, right? But so this is a little bit of that, taut, tight, disciplined power pop song out of the guys, a little bit heavy. But there you go, my number 4. Let's see if I can keep track of my numbers from here on in.
Well, without giving too much away, we both had a little bit of twisty do at the last minute, so I'll get to that. So it's very interesting and ironically about the same album. So
Okay.
my number 4 is going to be the debut, just called The Tubes from '75.
Okay.
All right. I think it probably has some of their most beloved early songs, and it's got a lot of really good ones. You got Al Cooper producing on here. You got the wacky and really upbeat Mondo Bondage, great track. What Do You Want from Life is, one of my favorite Tube songs. It's got that great closing monologue, right, which is
Yeah.
very famous. You got the crisp rocker Boy Crazy. You got the classic White Punks on Dope, which is kind of like, I was listening to it again the other day. I'm like, it's kind of like prog rock meets boogie, right? It's almost like the Tubes wanted to do a boogie song, but of course they're throwing all that wild virtuosity in there. You got the Zappa inspired Up from the Deep, Halos, a lot of fun. Really great Prairie Prince drumming on that. I love the atmospheric rocker Space Baby, which has a really good guitar solo. I'm not sure whether it was Spooner or Roger Steen who played that, but yeah, a really strong debut. Dig it quite a bit. Almost ranked it higher, but I think the 3 coming above it are just the Tubes albums that I always seem to reach for first. So
Cool. All right. Couple other little pieces of show and tell here. Here's one of the early Tubes rarities and smash hits. There you go. So that's a neat odds and sods. And this is something I had tucked in my remote control. This is just a weird little promo card. Remote, and then it's just some stuff about it on the back, but just a weird little card. So okay, so my number 3, I went with Completion Backwards Principle. Love this record to death. So that's the funny thing, right? I mean, when you get this record, and if once this image starts soaking in, you think really, really corporate. I mean, it's obviously funny. I mean, it's meant to be ironic, but this is them looking as corporate as you could possibly get. They're all the short hair and the suits and the whole thing. So, but it is a very, very poppy but just well put together record. This is produced by David Foster. I'm no David Foster fan, believe me, but it sounds good, and it sounds good, but it's not super high fidelity. It's not loaded with great warm bass or super high trebles. It is a workman-like in the middle sort of record. A little bit like what would you say, Bluish to Cult Fire of Unknown Origin. It's a little Martin Birchie, I think. But yeah, just love this record. Talk to You Later was the huge hit, big, energetic, classic, just super happy song. Sushi Girl is really cool. It goes a little bit back to their, early, funny era. Mr. Hate's kind of heavy. It's a little swingy, a little shuffly. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman is quirky and poppy. So, at this point, maybe they have a little, just a hint of Devo to them, perhaps. With some of those stabbing keys and some of that obscurity. But Think About Me is really cool. Don't Want to Wait Anymore. So there you go again. Another one of those sappy sounding ballads. I just, when they go right into it, I think what you see happening with their ballads is there's a little bit of that R&B ballad influence that comes in the melodies, right? And I'm not a big fan of that. Power Tools is really cool, also a little bit heavy. Don't like Let's Make a Noise very much. Again, it's a little bit R&B-ish, but Amnesia is great. Amnesia is the one with a little bit of Egypto to it, a little bit of the Richie Blackmore. So great album, played it to death. And again, this is almost a whole nother debate, but this whole idea about why aren't certain albums certified gold or platinum, and you wonder if there's some nefarious stuff going on where the label is hiding sales, and the manager is lazy and he doesn't want to go get it, and the label doesn't really have any self-interest in telling you your album went gold and blah blah blah, or the label's a crappy label, or you've fallen out with the label. There's various reasons it happens, and then there's the Occam's razor reason. Maybe it isn't gold, but I'm just amazed that this record isn't gold in the States. There you go, number 3.
Cool. So that is actually my number 3 as well. And well, I'll get to that in a few minutes. But it's funny because when I started putting this list together, I originally thought that this might be my number 1. And then when I went and re-listened to these albums, I'm like, not quite. But there are a couple songs on here that I, absolutely love. I mean, Talk to You Later and Sushi Girl, both of those played all over the radio here, like when I was, when I was young. And a lot of really fun songs on here. But David, and I'm not a big David Foster fan either. His stamp is all over this album. You listen to this album and you listen to the other one that we're going to get to, and you're like, okay, well, that's the Chicago guy, right? Of course it is. It's like unmistakable. But, Talk to You Later, high energy rock, catchy as all hell, lots of guitars, Sushi Girl, can't miss Hook in that. Great Fee Waybill vocals on this whole thing. I think there's just enough guitar firepower on this album that really drives it. You got the anthemic Amnesia, which I like quite a bit, and I don't know why that wasn't a hit or released as a single. Maybe it was, who knows. Mr. Hate, good hard rocker. Kind of reminds me of, I don't know what it reminds me of. I listened to that song and I kind of, it brings up something else. I'm not quite sure what it is. You got Attack.
There is a band we haven't brought up here before that they remind me of a little bit, and that's Cheap Trick all through these years, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. And maybe that's who I'm thinking of on some of this stuff. But Attack of the 50-Foot Woman reminds me of kind of like Steely Dan, right? So it's, especially like the Asia period, that sort of thing. What else? Think About Me, A Matter of Pride. I don't want to wait anymore. That was kind of a minor hit for them, and that to me is like, if you would have put that on a Chicago album around the same time, I would have been like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's, David Foster all over the place there. Power Tools, a pretty good song. Let's Make Some Noise. I think there's a little something for everybody on this album. It's a very fun and a very listenable album. Like I said, I had, I think because I don't think I ever actually thought about what my favorite Tubes albums ever were until we decided to do this show. And I automatically assumed that this would probably be my number one. Then when I re-listen to these, I'm like, yeah, not quite, but I do like it quite a bit. It is my number 3, right? So.
Cool. All right. So my number 2 and my number 1 also flipped a little bit back and forth. And I'm going to go with the sort of, responsible answer. So I, to dampen being called a contrarian all the time, I thought this would be the Pete answer, because, you often go for the earliest stuff. And I was surprised to see the first album come up early there. So I was thinking, well, if Pete's allowed to do that, maybe I should do that. But no, I'll stick with what I was going to do here. So, so my number 2 is Outside Inside. My heart tells me this is my number 1, but like I say, I kind of went with the brain this time because I played this album to death when it came out. I just love it. The sonics on it are beautiful. Like just the whole drums, bass, guitar meld, the cymbals. Fee sounds great on it. She's a Beauty. What an incredible hit single that was. That was a big song for them. I think that might be their biggest song ever. If I remember right, I was looking at this stuff on Spotify, and I think it might be the biggest one. White Punks on Dope is pretty high. There's a couple others in there that get played a lot, but No Not Again, great, poppy, hard rocky one. Maybe their heaviest song of all time is Out of the Business. Yep. Just what a beautiful, just sweeps you up with the enthusiasm of that song and the performance of it. The Monkey Time, Martha Davis cover, and this is them getting funky, but I'm totally on board. I love it. It was totally just fine. Glass House, beautiful power pop, slightly new wavy, slightly hard rock, even a little bit old time proggy sort of melodies to that one. So just a killer first side. Second side lets down a little bit, like with drums, which isn't really a song. Theme Park is okay. Fantastic Delusion is really cool in that power pop sort of way. Tip of My Tongue is totally fine as well. No problem with that. So yeah, Wild Women of Wongo, kind of fun. And it goes back to their old days, but yeah, just played this record to death. The original vinyl was a die cut hole in the middle, right? Showing the, the custom Tubes thing was showing through it. And then you had all your credits and all your lyrics on the back, right? So, neat artistic back cover. So yeah, like I say, it probably my most played Tubes album. There you go.
Same here. And when I, once I got past the, okay, this is not going to be my number one, I said, well, it's got to be this one, right? And then at the kind of the last minute, I made a change. So I love this, and I agree with you. I played this a ton. There's some absolutely spectacular songs on here. You basically mentioned all of them, but "She's a Beauty" is a great single, great song, and I think you're right. I think that was their highest charting single out of all of these. I mean, what a hook, right? What a hook. You love those big, almost metal riffs, right? And they did that a little bit in some of these tunes on these two albums here. But No, Not Again, great song. I I was playing Out of the Business the other day here in the house, and then I could not get out of my head. I was walking around the house singing it all day long. I'm out of the business into rock and roll. I mean, it's just such a great like anthem, right? It's like
Yeah.
so many of these songs should have been enormous.
Yeah.
But yeah, Monkey Time is great. Glass House is a good pop rock song, really slick. Wild Women of Wango kind of has that Zappa thing going on. Tip of My Tongue is like almost like Earth, Wind, and Fire, but it works, right? Um, Theme Park is cool. I think it's just a very slick 80s production. Obviously, we know who worked with them on this, so not a surprise. But I think the whole album is really easy on the ears. It's like I said, like this one, really listenable. I mean, these two kind of go hand in hand, and just some terrific songs. And why wasn't this or this like platinum selling albums here in the States? I'll never understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you say, hand in hand. I mean, hand in hand in how great they are. But I always put Remote Control and Completion Backwards as a pair, and I always put Love Bomb and Outside Inside as a pair because of that. A little bit because of the sonics and the funkiness, but Tip of the Tongue. When they get that bass line and that Prairie Prince drumming going and put some horns on it and stuff, it's like I'm sold. I'm a funk fan all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
I never was. I mean, it's incredible. Like they could be amazingly fun with the funk when they do it, but it's such a bizarre thing to introduce into this band at this late period, right?
Yeah, but it worked. I mean, it's enjoyable to listen to. I mean, I mean, I don't dislike Earth, Wind, and Fire. I like plenty of their stuff, but when it comes down to it, what I enjoy hearing the Tubes doing that than EWF, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. They do it well.
right.
Whatever.
Okay, so my number, grab this here. My number one choice for top Tubes album is this one here, which I got framed up and on the wall with one of their live thingies in there, and an old backstage pass down there. Is that one of the Reese Miller? How does this? Let's see. No, Monarch Entertainment, right? So I'm not sure where that's from, but so the first album. A lot of memories with this. I mean, at 16 years old in 1976, it was all the rage. We all knew that album. We all loved it because there were a lot of ads for it in Circus and Cream. They were a known band right out of the gates. There was a lot of press on them. What a great album cover with that squirted out tubes thing, right? And then the ripped cover, that's really cool there. But we loved it. It was a naughty record, right? Heavy petting on the what's that song called? Boy Crazy, right? And then White Punks on Dope is like such an in your face title, and it's naughty as well, and Mondo Bondage and all this. So I mean, it was a big hit album around high school hallways at the time. They were a notorious band. Then you saw the pictures of them, and you were actually scared of them. I mean, they look really freaky, right? Like really, really decadent. Like this is really off limits, this band, right? And yet it's so corporately arranged and well put together, like Frank Zappa, right? I mean, you listen to it and they sound like a studio band doing this. It sounds like a bunch of studio guys trying to make a funny album in a way, right? So side one, I'm less of a fan of side one. I really do like the moody, mystical Up from the Deep. I love Malaguena Celerosa, which is a straight, Latin, Tex-Mex, Mexican music, mariachi music type band. Did I say that right? I'm not sure. But love it, super entertaining. But all of side two, one of my favorite sides of the Tubes of all time. Mondo Bondage is a great sort of hooky, heavy song with really neat kind of rhythmic stabs to it. For a drummer, it's a really fun record if you're a drummer. This album, what do you want from life? You know, you said it so perfectly. It's just really funny. And there is that famous monologue at the end. On a baby's arm holding an apple, right? Uh, really, really cool. Boy Crazy is good. Melodic, hooky, hard rock, and then of course White Punks on Dope is their big anthem, big heavy. You know, it's basically their Earache My Eye, right? Their Cheech and Chong. Those two songs went together for us as kids. Really, they did. I mean, they were like these two comedy songs from these bands, right? Well, Cheech and Chong's is not a band, but and it had a little heaviness to it. This album, you know, well produced, and but in that great 70s timeless manner. So you know, like I say, I'm guilty as charged in saying I actually play remote control, completion, backwards principle, and outside inside more than this album. But you just can't deny this album and how important it was. So I just wanted to be a little responsible, you know, in my choice. I think a lot of people, you know, if we took a poll, this may come out first. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's they're such a hard band to nail down. Like, who knows what would come out first,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. I mean, I think if you're talking to people who have been following them since that first album, I think the first album probably would rank pretty high. But you know, how many people got into this band once they started to have like serious radio hits?
Yeah,
And so they would probably, you know, favor the albums that you just mentioned. So it's hard to say.
yeah.
Hard to say. Well, there you go. Everybody watching. We're not at the end yet, but we'll really be looking at your ranking of these albums after we're done with this. So that'll be quite interesting. Well, if you haven't figured it out, I'm going to go with Remote Control from '79 as my number one. Again, this was kind of like a late switcheroo here. And I kind of surprised myself because the more I, you know, re-listening these albums, the more I was like, this is damn good. And I think I like all these songs quite a bit. And it's just, for me, it's a real cohesive album. And I love Todd's production on this album. And, you know, I think probably one of the reasons why I like this album so much, I'm a big Todd Rundgren Utopia fan. And I love like the Raw album and Oops, Wrong Planet. And that's what this album reminds me of. It's a similar period. This album has this, you know, obviously it's a concept album about like, you know, the evils of television and whatnot. So it's got this kind of futuristic feel to it. But so many of the songs on here are just absolutely great. I love Turn Me On. I love TV is King. It's a good hard rock song. I like the kind of futuristic feel that the keyboards bring. But yet it's very melodic. All right, got the little bits of electronica going on here as well. Prime Time, good pop track. I Want It Now, also good kind of power pop. Again, reminds me of the more poppy stuff that Utopia was doing. No Way Out, good rocker. Get Overture, big bombastic proggy instrumental. No Mercy, Be Mine Tonight. I mean, you know, hit should have been written all over that. Only the Strong Survive is really good. Telecide, good rocker. I just think this, to me, probably their strongest album start to finish. But like you said, I may listen to these a little bit more, but I think that this is the one that kind of just really grabs me all the way through. So, but
Yeah,
you
and
know,
the Toddness of that album reminds me of the Toddness of Cheap Trick Next Position Please more than XTC or other things there, or even a lot of Todd itself, except for some of the stuff around those years. But I know what you mean. It's got this sort of this energetic mid-rangeness and jumpiness and quirkiness to the performances on it, right?
yeah.
It's like he gets them he gets them to be like mildly frantic in a way on that record, right?
Yeah, and Todd's got this way of layering vocal melodies on almost everything that he's worked with. But I agree with you. There are some productions, some bands that he's worked with where you don't really hear the Toddisms as much. XTC, I don't really hear the Toddisms as much on the, you know, Grand Funk Railroad. Not really, but you listen to this album and also Love Bomb, and I hear Todd Rundgren all over the place. I mean, it sounds almost to me like a Todd Rundgren album. Whereas I think on Love Bomb, it's a little bit too much. Here, I think it's just right. And it really works for me. So, and I kind of love that wacky album cover, right? That's pretty cool too. So yeah. So there you have it.
Wicked. Yeah. Wow, that was fun. Yeah, I never get to talk about this band very much, and this is really cool talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Martin, but I sometimes really enjoy talking about bands, like you said, that you don't get to talk about much.
Mhm.
Because I mean, you know, we sit here a lot and talk about Sabbath and Priest and Maiden and Purple and Zeppelin and all the usual suspects a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that because we love them and they're some of our favorite bands. But I like every night, like when we did the XTC show, I mean, that kind of took us out of our comfort zone a little bit, right? It's
Yeah.
like we like these bands, but it's not bands that we pontificate on a lot. And the Tubes are exactly the same thing. So it's like, so it's kind of cool trying to describe things in a different way to describe a different band that's not the kind of same thing that we talk about all the time. So yeah, pretty cool.
Awesome.
So I'm really curious to see how people are ranking this catalog.
Yeah, me too.
So
Yeah.
so there you have it, everybody. 8 albums. Rank all 8 if you like. Rank your top 5. If you don't like the Tubes, hey, that's okay too. If you've never listened to the Tubes, check out our top 3 or 4 each, because I think we basically have the same albums in our top at the top of our list here. I think you really can't go wrong with those at all. And let us know what you think if you're new to the Tubes. If you're a big Tube fan, well, we want to see your list. So put them in the comments below. We'll be checking it out. And Martin, you want to give your link to where folks can go and find you and buy some of those wonderful books you produce?
Yes, martinpopoff.com. I sign them, send them all out of the office here. I just pulled the trigger the other day and put the Angel book back in print that had sold out. So I'm going to have lots of copies of the Angel book that I'm wondering how long they're going to be sticking around. So if you like Angel, if you like the Tubes, you might like Angel, right? So there you go, martinpopoff.com.
There you go. And everybody, just a little heads up, just be patient with the postal services these days. You know, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and you know, I'm Martin's still waiting for his Sea of Tranquility shirt that I sent him like a month and a half ago. So it's stuff is taking a little bit longer. So, but I generally, Martin, I get stuff from you pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Even
it's a crapshoot out there right now, and I'm answering an email or two a day about where my package is, and send me the tracking. But yeah, things are. I'm in Canada, and I actually have a way of using media mail, and it goes across into the States, and I get just different stories all the time. Sometimes lightning quick, sometimes a month, right?
yeah, yeah. So, you know, it's just everybody be wary of that. I mean, you know, you didn't get your Sea of Tranquility shirt. I sent one to Sydney from the Hudson Valley Squares, and she's like in the next state in Pennsylvania, and she still hasn't gotten hers yet either. I'm like, what is
Yeah.
going on here? But that's what happens. It's like there's certain like regional hubs that are really understaffed, that if your package gets sent there, it's almost like it goes into limbo for weeks on end. So
Yeah.
kind of is what it is, right? It's the way of the world right now. So hopefully everybody gets their books from Martin pretty quickly, and visits us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So what do we got coming up? So we got Hudson Valley Squares on Monday. You got a couple of Monsters Den episodes coming up this weekend. I'm also going to try and get to ranking the albums of Sanctuary as well as Ashbury this weekend, and all sorts of stuff coming up next week. So stay tuned for that. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good weekend, everybody.